Welcome. Welcome to National Apprenticeship Week 2022. And of course, welcome to Estio Training. I'm Steve Jarman. I am a trainer for infrastructure and network services, which encapsulate the level 4 network engineer and all that entails, everything networking, and also the level 3 apprenticeship, a relatively new one, the communications technician, which involves 3 pathways. One is communications, one is networking, and the other one is support and help desk roles. That particular apprenticeship has like a core content and splits off into 3 separate pathways depending upon what job you have and what career you're pursuing. So a little bit about me. I've been with Estio now for a few months, shall we say, and enjoying every second. But previous to this, I was a network manager for about 8 years, and I worked in data MIS for about 2, so that gives me a whole wealth of support, whole wealth of knowledge and experience in all things IT and IT management, managing my own network team, things like that throughout the time, and working with apprenticeships now since about 2013, 2014, right the way through the old standards and all the other ones we had around at the time, leading into the new ones at the moment, which is where I specialise. So I'm responsible for in a big team here at Estio, but my chosen discipline, my specialist area is infrastructure and networking. So buckle up. I've got a bit of a presentation for you, a bit of a live demo of accessing various internet services. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get something out of it, and there is something at the end just for you to research as an extra task if you really need to. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. There's the presentation. Just a few slides to get through, and nothing major, but this will introduce some topics and subjects that you've sort of heard of about how you access various things on the internet, and we will then come to sort of fruition about exactly how that's done and how that is supplied. So without further ado, let's move on through this session, and hope you get something out of it. Right, okay, there's the introductions. I've introduced myself on the just before this video, so we'll move on and talk about exactly what it is we're going to be doing. So the whole aim of this is to understand various network services and how they function. We will sort of justify and give an explanation of what network services actually are, and without any shadow of a doubt, you will have used quite a few of them already, although there are very many more than you can possibly imagine. So how we're going to do this is we're going to state some of the most used services on the network, which I just mentioned, okay, and we're going to state how you access them without you knowing it. These are sort of things that are very transparent to you. In other words, you use them, but we need to explore in a little bit more detail here about exactly how that's done in the background. And on the back of that, we will state in objective 3 we will state how these are actually provided to you. So how you access them and how they're provided at the other end in the most efficient manner possible. Right, okay, let's crack on with the guts of this, shall we? There we are. So what are network services? Well, I'd say you've used them before, and once I start listing a few, it's going to be the oh yeah moment. I've used that and I've used that, but I didn't fully understand what the mechanism was behind it. I will add that what I'm running through now is included as part of the level 3 information communications technician, which I alluded to in my introduction, and it is most definitely there for level 4 networking, obviously in far more detail than I'm going to present here at the moment. So let's move on. So the internet is a provider of many things. It's an all singing, all dancing entity that sits there outside of our house, our home, flat, or wherever we happen to be. And there are many services on the internet that come our way and many services we use. So let's start having a look. So the technical definition is, I will read that out anyway, saying computer networking, and I mean these services can be provided on a local network, in other words, within your organization, company, or school, or the internet. So a network service is an application that provides, for example, data storage, some manipulation thereof, presentation, some communication or other capability, which is often implemented using a client server or peer-to-peer architecture. What that means, your client server relationship, you are the client, your laptop, mobile phone, tablet, iPhone, Xbox 360, whatever it happens to be, PlayStation, whatever, is a client, and it will access some form of server at the other end. That server might be actually on your network in your company or school, which sometimes it usually is, or it might be out there on the internet as provider of a cloud service or something like that. So that's our technical definition, but what does all of it mean? Okay, so when a network is used, there are various types of services available, and let's have a look. These are known as web browsing. We've web browsed before. We've used internet banking, possibly. We've streamed. So any of your services like Netflix, etc., will all be a streaming service. And cloud storage, we probably use OneDrive, Google Drive, or the Apple equivalent thereof for storing stuff out there on the internet, backing up our phones and so on and so forth. And we've used things like email, which is, you've heard of Office 365. You may not have heard of something called IMAP or POP. These are sort of proprietary sort of protocol for emails and how they are accessed in the background. Now, that is just a few. There's 5 there. There are many, many more, and we will see the exact number of how many possible services there could be just a little bit later, and I'll be giving you some links so you can jump off and start looking at this stuff if you feel the need to. I hope you do. Right, okay. Now, the service names, I've sort of got a little bit of a graphic on the right of the screen there with some sort of names like FTP, SMB, SQL, DHCP, and so forth. Not necessarily need to hone in on those. It's a sort of a useful sort of graphic. But these are all services, and they have many names, and they have many acronyms associated with it. And you might have heard of those. I'm not going to go into each one of those. So you've got DNS, DHCP, FTP, SSL, POP, IMAP, RDP, many more. DNS will start looking up names on the internet and coming back with actual numerical numbers, IP version 4 and version 6. DHCP will provide a workstation, a tablet or whatever with an address. FTP will move files back and forth, a little bit insecure, but it will move files back and forth, and so on. I'm not going to go into each one of those, but I will now start to allude about how you access them and how they work. And so it is transparent to you, but you will need to know this going forward if you take up the this particular apprenticeship specifically mentioned. All right, so if there are so many of these services, and boy, you know, as I say, we will see how many there are very soon in this. How are they all provided? So we need to answer just a couple of questions before I give you the demo. So do we have to install separate hardware for each one on our internet network? I will answer these as we go through here. What do you think the downsides are? And it could prove very costly with all the hardware needed with a box for each service. Right, let's just explore these questions. So if we have a server on our network which gives you some web services, browsing the internet, nice and simple, and you have another server on there which is streaming, so you can stream your videos from it, that's fine. Do they have to be physical separate boxes? We're not talking about virtual machines there for those of you on the next level here, although that's obviously a great possibility and it can be done. But what we can do is actually run more than one service on one box. So what we would have would be a physical server. There's got to be a physical server somewhere. As I say, I'm leaving virtual machines just to one side of this for the moment. So we will need a physical server, whether that will be in your school or organization or company or wherever, or it may be somewhere out there on the planet on the internet. We will need that physical box. But that physical box can run so many things. It doesn't have to just run one thing. But there is a sort of a caveat on that. if you think of a web server and it's, let's say it's on the end of eBay or Facebook, one of these very, very big high throughput servers, it will probably have a dedicated service on it for web. But the purpose of this exercise here and the purpose of this presentation demonstration is to say, look, we don't have to have just one box for one service. It's very, very inefficient for doing that. So the downside of having a box for a service, it gets very expensive. And it's a nightmare to manage. Can you imagine all those boxes? One for file transfer, one for web browsing, one for email, one for RDP, remote services, and that sort of thing, and one for DNS and lookups. And oh man, let's have them running on one box. How does that box know what to do? How does it know what service to activate? Okay, let's move on. So it could be very hard to maintain, as I say, with all of that going on and the space needed for all that equipment. Yes, you can rent it out there on the internet as part of infrastructure as a service, for example, if you've ever heard of that. So yes, you can rent all that, but if you're having these servers internally for resilience, in other words, it's nice and reliable, the servers in another building, you haven't got to rely on the internet, you can swallow up an awful lot of space very quickly. So what I'm about to do is just demonstrate to you. So I'm going to close the presentation down and I'll go into Google afterwards. So I've got a local server on my network here. All I'm going to use is Chrome. Other network browsers are available, and I'll demonstrate three services, that my server, which is sitting about 6 feet in that direction or 2 meters away if you go metric, is offering. So this is a sort of a proof of what I'm talking about, that you have one box, many services. Now, what I'd like you to do is spot how these are all accessed from the same server. If we start looking in the URL at the top, I'm going to give you a clue there, and the clue is colon. I will say no more. Right, so here we are. Blank Google page. I'm accessing the internet on this, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to look at my local network here. I'm not going outside onto the network. I don't need to for this, although I could access various services across the internet, but it's far quicker and easier to explain this on a local network, which I have here in my own domain. So in the URL, I'll be putting some stuff, and if you look at the right hand side here, I've got Blue Iris login, I've got an Apache server, and I've got Logitech Media server going on here on my box out the back there. Blue Iris is a CCTV type application. Apache server is just a web services type, a free web services app that I just happen to put on there so I can get some pages off of my server at the back. And Logitech Media server, I also happen to have a lot of MP3s on there which I can stream. So in fact, it's a sort of a streaming service, if you want to put it that way. And I can stream to various rooms in the house should I need to. So I'm going to access the Blue Iris login. Now, don't get too excited. We've got a login page popping up here. And that is my internal login. Now, I'm a little bit reluctant to log in here and show you all my cameras, but as you can see, it's given me that. And that's my CCTV service running in the background there. Okay. Now, if I go to the next tab here, my Apache server tab, I am looking at the intranet. And if I go to my Logitech Media server tab there is my Logitech Media server. Okay, let's explore the URL at the top of the bar here. Let's go back to Blue Iris. If you look here at the very top, you see this, what's called an IP address, Internet Protocol address, which is a numerical address that my server has. In this case, it just happens to be 192.168.200.3. So that's how we would read one out. We read the number, then dot, number, etc. You get the idea. So that just means that I'm accessing the same server. And if we're looking at my intranet, there we are, look, it's the same address. And if we're looking at my Logitech Media server, lo and behold, guess what? It's the same address. Now that is proof that my server at that particular address is offering 3 different services, and there might be some more on there that I haven't explored yet or set up, but it's offering 3 different services. Now, if I pop back to the Blue Iris login, if you look on here, yeah, oh, okay, there's your clue. Now, if you look on there, all right, there's no colon. Okay, might explain why in a minute. Then we've got the Logitech Media Server, and we've got the clues sitting in there as well with this number to the right-hand side. So let's go back and explore that just again and say, there's my CCTV login. So if I want to look at cameras and recordings and things like that, it's there for me if I need to. I can access this from outside of the place that I'm in at the moment, because I've set it up to do so. But that's not what I'm doing at the moment. As I said before, this is on my local area network, my own private network here where I live. The address of the server is there for 192.168.200.3, and there's a magic number to the right-hand side of that. Looking at that, there is no magic number to the right-hand side. Okay. Now, Logitech Media Server, there's a magic number to the right-hand side there. Right. How is this done? Well, you can see how it's done. You can see how you're accessing it. So this brings us back to objective number 2, doesn't it? Yeah, this is how we're accessing it. If you are ever on the internet, for example, and you are looking at various things on Google Chrome or Edge or whatever it is you happen to use, Firefox, if you ever see a colon in there, it means you're accessing a particular type of service. To the right-hand side of that is a number. Now, what are these things called? Okay. So some of you are going, yes, it's called up. Right, okay, I don't quite go there yet. We'll revisit the presentation and we'll just run through exactly what those things are. But just to quickly go over this particular scenario that we've got here. I've got a PC, which is my laptop, just sitting down here, which sometimes I keep looking over just to see if it's still alive. And I'm on my local area network via wireless and wired to a server that's sitting out the back there running an old version of 2012 release 2, as far as I remember. And there are some services running on it that I need as part of my my sort of life here in this particular place where I live. And I've got some CCTV stuff going on, and I've got some web-based stuff going on, and I've got a media server. I can go in here and then interact with it, pick a player, and then start playing some music in various parts of the house. Okay. Yes, I could use this on the internet as a cloud service, Spotify, but this is the way it just happens to be set up here, and it works very well indeed. Okay, so I'm going to end the practical demonstration just here, and then we'll pop back to the PowerPoint, and I'll explain what all this is called and how it bolts together from the server perspective. Okay, see you in a minute. Right, we're back. Okay, you see the slide, because that was my demonstration, and the bottom right hand side there's a screenshot of my my media server as we demonstrated. Okay, now, okay, did you spot it? Well, I hinted often enough at it, didn't I? And I think even let it slip just the one. Okay, did you spot it? So the difference is in the command line. In other words, that URL that I'm typing in the top of Google there, I just happen to have them set up as bookmarks there as well. And it just saved me trying to type them in on the fly. So the difference is, for example, if you look at that, look, whoa, okay, all right, we know it's not secure, it's not an encrypted link, it doesn't need to be for this particular application, but there is the big hint there. There is the red arrow pointing to that colon in the middle. As I say, to the left, you've got an address of what the server is, a unique address on the network. It's the only one with that address on my network here. And to the right of that is a colon and then a number. Okay, that number is actually called a port. So it's a port number that needs to happen. So there we go. The fact is it's known as a port number. And this is how the server at the other end knows which application to run. In this case, the traffic to the server says, hey, dude, I am after port 9000. What do you got on port 9000? My server goes, Got it, no problem at all. 9,000, that's a Logitech Media server. Whew, here it is, and it gives me the web page for that, and does whatever it has to do in the background, looking at my database of MP3s by artist, album number, song title. You get the idea. Okay, presents that information on the screen. So it's called a port number. Okay, let's run through that again. The address there, 192.168.200.3, is the server, and anything to the right of the colon is the port number. If you try and access a port number that doesn't exist, you will get something like a page not found error come back, or service unavailable, or whatever it happens to be. All right, a server will not sit there and respond on all ports, and we'll see how many there are in a minute. Right, so okay, I'm after port 9000 in this particular instance, and it says, hey, that's the media server. So it then responds, bottom right hand, bottom red arrow there, and then it comes back and gives me the media server. Okay, that's how it works. You did spot, did you not? I hope you did, that when I looked at, when I didn't put a number in, when I looked at the web page that came up there from the Apache server, a page came up and I didn't specify a port number. Aha, what happens there? Is there a flaw in my plan? No, there isn't. By default, that port number is 80. Every web page on the planet, apart from HTTPS ones, when you get a little padlock there for you doing internet banking, for example, every basic web page, unencrypted and non-secure, is port 80. So if you don't type port 80 in, it will assume port 80 and then go from there that you're after a basic web page. So no flaw in my plan, okay? No flaw in what I'm telling you here. So don't put a port number in, it will go to port 80. If it flips to other applications within the server afterwards, then that's down to the server and how that's particularly working. So last run through of this, I want my media server, and we know that's port 9000, colon 9000. It's known as a port number. The server gets the request, the other end says, hey, I've got that, guys. That's port 9000. Bang, here's your Logitech media page. If it was port 2002, then the server, the other end, will go, right, that's not the Logitech media server page. That is my CCTV system, which just happens to be on port 2002. I could have given it any port number I liked, really, although there are some reserved ones that please steer clear of. We'll maybe have a quick look in a minute. So that's how you access them, top there with a colon and a number, and that's how they come back. So that number is translated into some particular application that is installed on the server at the other end. So that server at the other end can be on your network or it can be out there in the cloud. Okay, right. Port numbers. There are a few. So how many port numbers are there? Okay, take a guess. Okay, I hear you yelling at the screen. Some of you are coming up with an accurate number if you've heard of these before. 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 20,000. Well, there's just a whopping 65,535 port numbers available. But thankfully, you don't have to know them all. I don't know of anyone who could possibly remember that sort of number and the and what's associated with that port. There are a few common ones that when you are doing this apprenticeship, there are a few common ones that you may have to know, or you will have to know. And these are the ones that you'll be using in day-to-day life anyway, as part of a network service, as part of the user service, or whatever it happens to be. So there's a hell of a lot of them. And there are just a few, as I said, which you need to remember for the most common services. And right at the end of this presentation, there is a link where you can jump off and have a quick look at them. But yes, there's 65,535 of them. There are some common ones, and you've seen port 80. Well, that's a web page. Boy, that's common. Then you've got things like IMAP and POP. Well, it's email. Oh, okay, fine. And then you've got something called RDP, which is Remote Desktop Services Protocol, RDP. And then you can access an RDP server and have sessions interacting with another PC on that, or taking, logging in and getting a session on a server to administer it and that sort of thing as RDP. And there are loads more. That is a sort of a bit of a screenshot looking on the bottom right there. If you look at port 80, a little bit grey in the corner there, just like me, but there's a grey in the corner there, port 80, which says Hypertext Transfer Protocol HTTP. We talked about that. That's the basic use of web pages, which it's used by default. So don't specify port number, it always go there. Are there anything else in there? There's some other ones popping up in there, isn't there? Name servers and IBM, 109 and 110 POP, Post Office Protocol, is commonly used for email. Okay, all right. So there's loads of them. So if you want to look these things up, you can look at the YouTube, which gives you on that link at the top there. That will give you an overview of what I've just told you about how port numbers work. And you will find the list of port numbers. To be honest, if you just go to Google and type list of port numbers, up the top there comes Wiki. Now, sometimes Wiki can be a little bit inaccurate. In my experience of looking at Wikipedia over the years, for factual subjects like science or STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths, it's really quite accurate, and the list of port numbers in Wiki is actually very good. Now, there is a task sheet available for you to look at, and that will get you researching some ports and whether you want to use them. And I will upload the task sheet on here and get that on the screen for you in a second and run through it with you. All right. Okay, that pretty much sort of concludes where we're at. Now let's revisit. And did we meet these? Did we set out to do what it was that we want to do? Yeah, I think we did. Let's just be double sure of that, can we? So we need to state some of the most used services on a network, and we mentioned things like DNS, DHCP, and all the other funny buzzwords as well that you may have heard of at this point. If you pursue a career in IT, you will have heard of these within the first week. But there's other things like file transfers and email and cloud and access to desktop applications and so on and so forth. So those are the most used services on a network. Okay. So we stated those. Objective 1 is met. To state how these are accessed. Well, we had the live demo, didn't we? We had a look at what happens after the address of what you want to access. There's your colon and a number. Hey, server, I want you to give me something on that particular number, whatever it happens to be. And my server responded with 3 different types of protocol there and services. And objective 3, to state how these are provided. Well, the server gets the information, gets the port number and says, port number 9000, that's you, mate. And he runs up and gives you the appropriate page or service or whatever it happens to be. You may have installed applications that do this in the background, so you don't have to specify numbers. If you set up Outlook, for example, Office 365, it's nice and easy, username, password, yeah, it looks it up and off it goes. But if you are looking at IMAP and POP, you can play around and it will give you options as to what those port numbers actually are. So there's a prime example of where you may, not all the time, but you may need to change these depending on who provides your internet service. Okay, so there we go. 3 objectives met, no problem whatsoever. That actually ends the presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a second. There we are. So screen sharing stopped. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful. I hope it spurred you on for career in IT. All right, there's many things that are going to spur you on for career in IT. Having an interest in it is a fantastic start, and you can explore it from there on. So that's a little bit about how things work across the internet, how you can access various stuff, and how you can I hope how you can spark your interest in this, and I hope it's been very useful for you. I will sign off now, but I'm just going to do a little supplementary one just after this, and I will run through the task list with you. Thanks very much for watching and taking notes. I hope you look at the task list and get some stuff out of it as well. Please enjoy the rest of the National Apprenticeship Week 2022, and hope to see you as an STO apprentice at some time. Thank you. Welcome back to the supplementary piece of information, which is the task list. And what I will be doing is sharing a screen. I'm briefly going to go through this as well. You would have seen my presentation, the demonstration on port numbers and internet services. So this takes you to the next level a little bit if you want to do so. I hope you do. So the task is, you are a network manager in a school, and it has a newly installed network ready for you to test. Believe me, there's lots to do at that point. However, you need to set up some basic security. And as part of this, you need to disallow or stop or not allow services over your firewall for various people in the school. Now, obviously, having attended school, you've been frustrated because you can't get through the school's firewall and all those bits and pieces you really would love to access, but not appropriate to do so. This is what is happening. So you now need to provide a list of port numbers to your engineers, your engineering staff, so they can start to set these up and test them. They would have something there called a firewall, which you would dial into and say, these ports, block them. We do not want people going across them. Now, I've set up 2 tables below for you to fill in 3 examples on each. And I have said, for example, a port to block would be typically 143. Now, if you look up port 143, it's email access. Now, this is email access on this particular port, doesn't stop web-based email, but you don't want anyone setting up their Outlook or Gmail app on the phone to access port 143 and downloading via an email server. So what would you do? You would block that on your firewall, and whoever's trying to access it would not get through, and that service would not work. This is one of the many ways you can lock down internet access. I'm not talking about filtering of URLs and things like that for make sure they're appropriate, etc. This is just basic port blocking. That's the blacklist. That's actually called a blacklist. So anything in the blacklist is stopped. So what I'd like you to do is fill in 3 more. Tell me what those are. Google them, of course, and the reason why you want to block them. The one I put in here is a ports to allow. This port makes something called a white list. So anything in that white list will actually allow those ports through specifically. Now, you want to allow port 80 through. Simple as that, because you need people to access the internet. It takes a very brave network manager to block port 80. So you're going to wipe out internet access for anyone in your workplace or your school or wherever it happens to be. So not a good idea. What I'd like you to do again is to come up with 3 port numbers that you think should be allowed through your network, what they are called, and the reason why you are allowing them through. Okay, nice and simple. Shouldn't take you more than about 10 to 15 minutes at the most. If you want a list of port numbers, the jump off point is actually there at the bottom to the wiki I talked about. Okay, I hope that's okay for you. I look forward to hopefully seeing you at STO at some time.